When the days turn cold as the year wanes, a time comes around for corporate gains. As people gather round full of festive cheer, companies know that profits are near. A time of the season meant to express love, when companies know which products will fit like a glove. As they sit in their workshops to toil and trouble, but not too much to not burst the company's bubble. Vapid Christmas films are here at last, to make you smile and take your cash. As the holiday season comes this December, tell me, how many Christmas films do you actually remember? Christmas movies. By and large, a time where companies know that they don't have to try very hard to make a profit. Most Christmas films feel gross. It's like you can tell that everybody in it and everybody making it was just mailing it in to get another paycheck. Now, I'm not saying that all Christmas movies are bad. I'm saying that there is a clear line between the great ones and the ones that are terrible. In fact, some of the great ones are among my favorite movies ever, such as the best, most accurate Christmas movie ever made, also known as... I feel like everyone growing up had some iteration of the Muppets to grow up with. For some, it was The Muppet Show. For others, it was the most recent Muppet movie duo, and for me, it was the late 90s when the Muppets made their foray into classic literature. The Muppets' Treasure Island stands alongside Treasure Planet, yes, I will shoehorn this movie into every video, you can't stop me, you won't, as one of the best film adaptations of a book ever made. As well as the Muppets making another film that I would watch every year with my family. Also, one of the most faithful and wonderful book adaptations ever made, and one that I still watch with them every year at this time of the year. A Muppet's Christmas Carol. Blending a serious, quite frankly dark and disturbing tale of a man coming to terms with his life, being tortured by three spirits, and eventually doing a 180 and embracing all life and joy, mixed with the Muppets' signature silliness and absurdity, was a recipe for success from the beginning. But then they decided that that wasn't enough, and they made a technically solid film from start to finish, with so much love and care in it that it could thaw even a curmudgeon's heart. Now, I'm sure I don't need to go over the plot of the movie like I normally do because, well, you've probably heard or watched some iteration of A Christmas Carol every year since you were born. But just to quickly summarize for those who are still under rocks, Ebenezer Scrooge was...
tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching, covetous old sinner.
That is then visited by 4 different spirits on Christmas Eve that caution him and show him the error of his ways, leading to his redemption in the end. It's a nice story that has clearly stood the test of time. But what I find amusing is that somehow, this silly little absurd movie with puppets is the one to do the story with the most justice and the most accurate to the book that anybody has ever attempted. I've talked at length about honoring your source material here on the channel. And one thing that I love is creative takes on classic stories that still hold the spirit and essence of what made the original so good. And I swear, this next line feels like an absolute joke, but genuinely, every member of the cast was cast beautifully. Kermit is bar none the best representation of Bob Cratchit that we have ever gotten. Humble and joyful in the face of abject poverty, he's there for his family every step of the way as a wonderful father and an outstanding member of the community. And there's something about Kermit and Bob Cratchit that just makes sense. Making a new Muppet to play Tiny Tim instead of trying to shoehorn an already existing Muppet like Pepe the Shrimp into the role just makes so much sense. And it leads to the best Tiny Tim that we've ever gotten. Innocent, full of love and compassion, and just every scene with him melts your heart. And personally, my favorite casting of the entire movie, casting Gonzo and Rizzo as Charles Dickens and his assistant is an absolute stroke of brilliance. Much of the comedy of this movie comes from the duo, which allows the rest of the cast to play a straight-faced interpretation of the story. Having Gonzo cite passages from the book verbatim without it being out of place, and then letting Rizzo make a wisecrack to keep the comedy flowing, I mean, come on. It's so genius it hurts, and I love this dynamic.
To say that Scrooge was not startled would be untrue. Still, the moment had passed, and the world was as it should be.
He ain't right. Didn't even break his concentration.
This decision of having Gonzo quote from the book keeps much of the book's original writing intact and keeps the spirit intact. In fact, if you compare the lines of the script for Gonzo and Ebenezer in the film to their book counterparts, you'll find that the vast majority of their dialogue is word for word taken from the book. And speaking of Ebenezer, Michael Caine turns in one of his best performances ever in a Muppet movie. And he completely sells the absurdity of just being face value everyday normality. When later asked about it, Caine said that he approached the role as if, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I am going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role." And for my money, it works. Caine playing the role completely deadpan and serious sells the world of the Muppets, and it gives the film this immersive feeling. Even though they break the fourth wall every few minutes, everything about this movie just feels so real. His acting in this movie is so good that if I didn't know better, I would believe that Fozziwig did in fact own a rubber chicken factory in the book. In fact, for this video, I had to look up to see if his name was Fozziwig. Turns out it's not, it's Fezziwig.
This is Fozziwig's old rubber chicken factory.
Adding to all of these wonderful performances is the wonderful costuming that is one of the most period accurate costuming jobs in a film to date. There's actually a wonderful breakdown of this to which I'll link to because it is fascinating. You can tell when a movie is made with love and when it truly means something more to those involved. And for many, this movie was just that. A Muppet's Christmas Carol is the first Muppets production that was made following the death of Jim Henson. For many people working on the movie, this was their love letter to him and his family. A way to show appreciation for the impact that he had on all of them and all of us. Every aspect and detail of this movie just feels so real and authentic. There are so many things that I could make an entire video about, such as the music. The music is one of the most moving Christmas soundtracks of all time. And all it really takes for me is just to hear those horns to put me into the Christmas spirit. As well as every big song number being memorable and meaningful, from the hopeful optimism of It Feels Like Christmas to the finale of A Grateful Heart. Every song has meaning and purpose behind it, driving the story forward, as well as putting a smile on your face. And it's one of those things that you can tell that everybody working on it had so much fun with the songs. In fact, Michael Caine has even gone on record saying that if there was a minor mistake in A Grateful Heart, he would offer to do the entire scene again from the beginning just because he loved doing it so much. Or how about the fact that this movie starts out with a very gray, monotone color palette of the streets of London, and then when we come to the end of the film, those same streets are filled with color and vibrance and life, visually showing how Ebenezer once saw the world and how he sees it now. And you guys all know how much I love visual storytelling. Or I could talk at length about how all of the crazy tilts and camera angles when we were first introduced to Scrooge show us how twisted his worldview is, and how everything is looking up at Scrooge with the characters in the foreground to show that he's towering over them and imposing his will upon them. And then when we get to the end of the film, that is not the case at all. He comes down to their level and interacts with them comfortably. I could go on and on about how this film doesn't shy away from dark subject matter and materials, choosing not to dumb down the classic story, but instead trusting in kids' emotional intelligence, bringing this story to life with both the light and dark elements that are so important. Finally, I could probably do an entire video about all of the love and care that went into every performance. From the subtle moments like Ebenezer cracking a terrible joke with the ghost of Christmas Present, and the ghost, instead of just looking at him weirdly, he laughs more heartily than he probably should have, encouraging Scrooge to come more out of his shell. And then there's the not so subtle moments like the wisecracks from Rizzo and Gonzo that keep the wackiness and the absurdity of the Muppets well and truly alive in this movie. This movie is just the Christmas spirit embodied. A time to put differences aside and embrace one another in love, or as Tiny Tim would say,
God bless us.
God bless us, everyone.
The Muppets Christmas Carol is by far and away the best adaptation of A Christmas Carol that we have ever seen. And in my opinion, is the best Christmas movie of all time ever made. For me, I don't think that's ever gonna change. It's a pretty serious story about life. It has some very dark moments, but the story is also full of heart and emotion, while also embracing the silliness of it all at the same time. Every year, I look forward to the tradition of grabbing a cup of hot cocoa, hunkering down into a blanket, and watching one of the best movies ever made. One that makes me feel like a kid again. And this year, I hope you join me in this yearly tradition because after all, there's only one more sleep till Christmas Day. Happy holidays and have a wonderful Christmas. Thank you all for a wonderful year.